Today's episode of Just the Tip Tuesday is brought to you by CK Worldwide, the standard in TIG welding. CK just informed me that they've extended their awesome deal on the MT200 AC/DC now through the end of the year. The MT200 comes with everything you need right out of the box to start TIG welding, except the consumables and gas. The MT200 is a complete TIG welding system capable of 5-amp arc starts and has a compact portable design and weighs just 32 pounds. On top of that, it's dual voltage, so you can run it off a 115 volt or 220 volt outlet, and it boasts an easy to use interface to help get you set up to weld in a flash. The MT200 AC/DC is the answer to both creativity and production driven TIG welding. This innovative TIG machine provides the ability to quickly and efficiently adapt to dynamic welding situations while maintaining the quality of experience you've come to know and love and expect from CK Worldwide. Get your MT200 today for just $19.95, along with other genuine CK Worldwide parts and accessories through your local authorized CK distributor. Not sure where your closest distributor is? No problem. Head on over to ckworldwide.com and click on the Find a Dealer tab. It's that easy. CK Worldwide, the standard in TIG welding. Now let's get into the episode. Welcome to this week's episode of Just the Tip Tuesday. Today we have another listener submitted question. If y'all have a question you want answered on a future episode of Just the Tip, go ahead and shoot me an email, show@arcjunkies.com, or drop me a DM on Instagram. Today's question comes from American Welding Laboratories on Instagram, and he asked, Jason, could you talk about stick out and its relationship to cup size? And how do I choose the correct cup size and filler rod for a project? I could definitely answer that. Let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to start off by talking about cup sizes because not a lot of people know this about cup sizes, but cups for TIG welding come in many different sizes, and that's because they all have their place and purpose in your arsenal. I always recommend, have a good selection of cups in your TIG welding kit. Now, cups are measured in 1/16 of an inch here in the US. So we have sizes like a number 4, a number 5, a number 6, a number 7, so on and so forth. You can even get a cup up to a number 16. So if we break them down, a number 5 cup is going to be 5/16 diameter opening. Likewise, a number 8 cup is going to be a 1/2 inch because that's 8/16. And a number 16 cup is going to be 1 inch diameter because there's 16/16 in 1 inch. So everything is based off of 1/16 increments. Now, apparently over in Europe, they use the same cup sizes. Well, they have the same numbers on them, but they're not done in metric. So like a number 6 cup isn't 6 millimeters. The cup actually correlates to liters per minute for gas coverage. So our number 5 cup, which is 5/16 diameter over in Europe, requires about 5 liters per minute of shielding gas. Now, that's just a fun fact that I picked up when I did episode 208 with Christian Cordes. He's a super intelligent welder over there in Germany. And that just kind of blew my mind that, that it's not really a conversion factor. It just conveniently worked out that way. All right, so now that we understand cup sizes, let's talk about the purpose of the different size cups that we have at our disposal. I personally carry several different sizes, all the way from a number 4 up to a number 19 from Michael Furick, and that's because I do a little bit of everything. Some of the things we want to consider when we pick a cup size are, what type of material am I going to be welding on? So am I welding on stainless? Am I going to be doing some aluminum, maybe some plain carbon steel, titanium, or Inconel, anything of that nature? What type of material am I going to be working on? Next question, what thickness is the material? How thick are we talking? Next question is, how big of a weld do I actually want to make? And then the last question I typically ask myself is, how close can I get to the weld joint with my torch and my tungsten? So let's talk about material first, because this is the first question that I ask myself if I'm going to be doing any type of project and I need to figure out what cup size I'm going to be using. If I'm welding on stainless or Inconel, or titanium for that matter. Now, I don't do a lot of titanium. First time I got to do it was like 2 weeks ago over at Ink the Bay, so I am not the titanium expert, but I know that, titanium requires a lot of shielding gas. Very similar to stainless and Inconel. So I like to use the largest cup possible that's going to fit into the weld area that I need to weld. And that's because I want to keep the puddle completely inert so that I don't get any interaction with the outside atmosphere. I don't want any oxygen or anything like that inside the weld until it's solidified and partially cooled off due to the shielding gas. I also want to try and keep a lot of the heat out of the heat effective zone. So stainless is susceptible to developing oxides, and in certain applications, you can't have oxides present in the weld. That's where all those fancy colors come from, like your golds, your blues, and purples. These colors are indications of what temperature the weld was when it was introduced to the atmosphere. Ideal colors for most of your stainless applications are going to be silver to straw color. And I remember when I was working at theme parks, we couldn't have any coloring on our stainless welds, and it used to piss me off because I'd get all those crazy purples and blues and, the fancy colors and stuff on there. And then we had to take a wire brush and wire brush it off while it was still hot to get that oxide layer off, because they want it nice, smooth, clean, and shiny looking. Same thing for, you get into the food and beverage industry, all that stuff that you can't have any oxides on there. They want those colors completely removed. So you got to either, try to control that with your heat and temperature, or use a passivation system, or possibly wire it, brush it off while it's still hot, get those oxides off there. So typically your silver to straw color, those are going to occur right around the 500 to 700 degree Fahrenheit. And then we're going to start getting into our purples right around 850 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we start getting into like the light blues and the deep blues right around 1,000 to 1,100 degrees. Sometimes we want the colors, sometimes we don't. So a bigger cup and a gas lens combination, that's going to help you get adequate shielding gas, increase your travel speed a little bit. That's going to decrease your heat input, and you're going to get much less colors if that's the desired application. Now, if you want to get those crazy cool colors and stuff like that, try changing up your travel speeds. You can use a little bit smaller diameter cup and, increase or decrease those travel speeds. You're going to build up a little bit more heat input. You're going to start, being able to control what type of colors you're getting in your TIG welds. Now, obviously, if you go too slow, you don't have enough gas coverage, you're going to cook the crap out of it and it's going to turn gray. You don't want to do that because you're burning, all the chromium and nickel out of that stainless. So just play around with it, and you can actually dial it in and get those awesome colors like you see Dabs Wellington getting and Dab and Dado. They do some really cool artwork pieces where they're able to control exactly what colors are on the workpiece that they're doing based off travel speed and gas coverage. Now, if I'm going to be doing like plain old vanilla carbon steel, I'm not really concerned with the cup size. At that point, I try to use the smallest one that I can use to get the job done. And it's really going to depend on the application. Now, I have a lot of buddies that do pipe welding, and they base their cup size on the width and depth of the groove that they're going to be welding. So they might start off with like a number 6 for a root, and then bump up to like a number 8 to do a fill pass, and then maybe a number 10 or a number 12 to do the cap, because the width of the groove for each pass, the smaller the cup helps them get into the deep parts of the groove. And then as they start building up weld layers, they start increasing that cup size to be able to walk the cup right on the cap and, put a nice slick bead over top of that. So steel, you don't have to get too carried away with. You can use the bigger cups and everything, but remember, you're paying for the shielding gas, so you're going to use a lot more gas coverage if you're using a bigger cup. But regular steel, it's pretty vanilla, pretty forgiving. You can, just use a standard collet body and get, pretty good results with that. Now, if I'm going to be running aluminum, I typically am going to determine my cup size based off of the weld size that I want to lay down. I want to choose the smallest cup possible, roughly an 1/8 inch larger than the diameter, roughly an 1/8 inch larger in diameter than I want my weld size to be. So if I'm trying to put, let's say, an 1/8 inch weld down, which is essentially 2/16, I'm going to step up to a number 4 cup, which is a 1/4 inch. And if I want to throw down a 3/16 weld, I'm going to go ahead and step up to a number 5 cup. It's just 2/16 larger than the weld that I'm going to do, or an 1/8 inch. And that's because your arc is essentially going to follow that column of argon. So if you're trying to get a small weld on aluminum and you got like a number 8 cup on there, you're going to have a really wide weld. So try to keep the cup size small, if you're trying to lay down a small weld. Now, if you want something bigger, same rule is going to apply. Just bump it up, about an 1/8 inch bigger than the size of the weld that you want. Now, thickness is also going to play a big role in cup size. Usually the thicker the material, the larger the weld's going to be, so the larger the cup is going to be. And always remember, on thicker stuff, you can also lay down multi-pass welds. So you're not trying to hit like a 1/2 inch fillet weld in one shot. You're probably going to lay up 3-6 passes or something like that on the piece. So just base it off of, how big each pass is going to be, not your overall final weld. Another consideration is how close can I get my tungsten to the weld joint? If the weld's kind of in a tight spot, you may need to stick your tungsten out a little bit further. And that's why we use larger diameter cups. A good rule of thumb is you can stick your tungsten out the same distance as the cup diameter. So let's say you've got a number 6 cup in there, which is 6/16, right? That means I can stick my tungsten out 3/8 of an inch if I'm running a number 6 cup. And that's one of the main reasons I have the larger cups, like a number 16 or a number 19, because with a 16, I can stick that tungsten out, up to an inch. With a 19, I can stick my tungsten out to an inch and 3/16. And these help me get into like very tight spots, where I necessarily don't have the access. Kind of like when I do a lot of restaurant repairs for like baskets and bins and other pieces. It's not initial construction. A lot of times it's repairs. So there's a lot of crap in my way because I'm not building it from the ground up. If I was building it from the ground up, I would try to get all my welds in before I start throwing things in my way. But on repairs, we don't have that luxury. I got to get into where I need that weld. So if I can, I'll rock like a bigger cup. I'll get some more stick out and I might be able to get into that tight space. Another cool tip that I want to share with everybody is there's this stuff out there called plasma tape, and it's a high temp adhesive tape that I can make a cup out of it and get into hard to reach spots. So what I do is I'll put a gas lens on there, and then instead of screwing on a cup, I'll just wrap some of this tape around the threads a couple times, maybe like inch and a quarter in length. And this gives me the ability to have a flexible cup. Now, don't get too carried away with on the amps here because it's only rated for about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. But for low amp, hard to reach spots, like if you kind of got to do, get into, you got some clearance issues or something like that where, you're like, oh, damn, if I could just scoop my torch over an 1/8 inch, not necessarily change my angle, but if I could scoot over like an 1/8 of an inch, I'd be able to nail this weld perfect, but that cup's in my way. It's hitting up against a piece. Well, if I got a flexible cup, I can just kind of push it up against there, and that cup's going to give a little bit, and it's going to allow me to get that extra 1/8 of an inch over there and still provide good shielding gas to where I need to reach to. So check that stuff out. You can pick it up on McMaster Car. I can't remember exactly what they call it. Everybody that I've talked to pretty much calls it plasma tape. It's this blue tape, and I want to say it's rated for like 300 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty cool stuff. So that pretty much covers cup sizes and stick out. But what about rod size? There's actually a really good rule of thumb for this one. So the rod you want to choose is going to be based off, once again, your weld size. What size weld do I want to run? And if you're running a pass with filler wire, your weld size is going to be roughly 1.5 times the size of the filler metal that you're using. For instance, if I have 1/16 diameter filler wire, multiply that by 1.5, I'm probably going to knock out about a 332 size weld. If I have 332 filler wire, I'm going to knock out a 9/64 weld. We'll go ahead and round that up to a 5/32 weld. 1/8 inch diameter filler wire, I'm probably going to knock out probably a 3/16 weld size. Obviously, these are rough guesstimates, but it's fairly accurate. Things that are going to play a big role in weld size when you're doing any type of gas tungsten arc welding is, if you remember back during one of my episodes, I talked about shielded metal arc welding. It's a constant current process. So as my arc length increases, my voltage increases. It's the same thing with the TIG welding process because they're both constant current processes. So as I increase my arc length with my tungsten from my puddle, my voltage is going to spike, and then my puddle is going to get wider. Likewise, as I get closer, that voltage is going to decrease, and my arc length is going to decrease, and I'm going to make a much smaller weld. So the further away I am from the puddle, the more voltage, the wider the puddle. The closer I am, the lower the voltage, the tighter the arc, the smaller the weld puddle. So play around with it. I mean, if you got a little piece of material there, strike an arc on it and then kind of pull back, and you'll be able to watch it. You can see the voltage spike on your machine, and then you'll see that puddle get a lot wider. Likewise, if you get closer to it, that voltage is going to drop, and you're going to get a much smaller puddle. So obviously, if I'm trying to put in a specific size weld, I can't be too far back. Otherwise, I'm going to have a large weld. Also, if you're walking the cup or moving side to side, obviously that's going to change the size of your weld. But if you're just doing like a lap joint on some 1/4 inch material and you're doing a nice slow, steady push, you got a nice tight arc length, you can knock out a pretty good, 3/16 fillet weld with 1/8" filler wire, no problem. Another thing I show people when I teach TIG welding, and it makes things like super, super easy and, helps people comprehend almost immediately. So when I teach TIG welding, or pretty much any process for that matter, I'll go ahead and pull out my flashlight and turn it on, and I'll hold it like close to a table or a wall and say, okay, watch this. As I increase, or as I pull that flashlight away, I increase that distance, that puddle gets wider, and that's due to the increased arc voltage. And now if I move that flashlight closer back to the table or the wall that I'm, shining it on, it's going to get much smaller. That's exactly what's happening when we're doing, our TIG welding. I pull it further back, that puddle is going to get wider. I move in close, it's going to get, much smaller. My buddy Ryan Eubank showed me that at one of the advanced educator workshops, and damn, it just made everything click for me. And I was like, that's freaking brilliant. It's a great visual representation to show, a group of people the effect that your arc length has on your material or your weld. And now if you're a welding instructor, this is another cool thing that I started doing, is walk up to the dry erase board or the chalkboard, whatever you got, or soapstone on a table, and just draw you a big L. Okay. And now take your flashlight, get it real close, and shine it at a 45-degree angle and point it at the root of that L shape, just like you're going to put in a fillet weld. And you'll be able to show your students or whoever you're trying to show or demonstrate this to, check this out. I got equal leg length if I hold my torch at a perfect 45-degree angle. Now, as I change that angle and start pointing a little bit more towards the horizontal plate, it's changing the leg length on that vertical side. Likewise, if I drop that flashlight a little bit lower and I start shining a little bit more on that vertical leg, I'm decreasing the leg length on the horizontal side. So it's just a great visual representation of, what your work angles are actually doing as you're welding across a piece of material. Because a lot of people, they really can't see it. You can't see the forest from the trees because you're staring at that puddle, and they're really not paying attention to what their work angles are doing, and they're having a hard time with it, and they're just blowing the top edge off of, a lap joint or something like that. Show them that little work angle trick with a flashlight, and I guarantee you it's going to click. It's going to make so much more sense. Well, I think that pretty much covers the question that was asked. I hope this helps you all out. And as I said at the start of the show, if you have any questions, that you want to hear presented on the show, go ahead and drop me an email, show@arcjunkies.com, or you can shoot me a message on Instagram in the DMs, just at Arc Junkies Podcast on Instagram. The whole purpose of this podcast and this show is to help educate and inspire the next generation. So if you're a student and you have questions, let me know. If you're an instructor, you have a tip to share or a common question that's, keeps reoccurring in your class, go ahead and send them on over. We'll talk about it on the show. It's all about helping the community. And as a bonus, if I pick your question, I'm going to go ahead and send out a free Arc Junkie sticker pack. On another note, join me tomorrow evening on the American Welding Society's Instagram page for a special edition of Weld Wednesdays with AWS. We're doing a live Instagram on April 6th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I'm going to be talking to Tom Mulville, also known as weld.tom on Instagram, Matt Contini with Lincoln Electric, and Josh Pauly with Vectus Automation. We're going to be discussing weld automation, cobots, and robots, and all that other good stuff. Should be a great conversation. I talked to these guys last week on a preliminary practice version of the live. They're super smart, super intelligent people, and I think it's going to make for a great conversation. I appreciate you all listening to the show. Make sure to check out CK Worldwide's website and see how they can help you with all your TIG welding applications and get you in touch with a local CK Worldwide distributor. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.